On the other day, we have executed the workflow manually. We executed the jobs within a workflow serially and parallelly. And we have created the job dependencies as well. So the first two jobs should successfully completed, then only the third job will be getting executed. In other words, the first two jobs will be executed parallelly, then the third job will be executing serially. So we haven't provided any input to the workflow. This method may not be suitable in all our use cases. Sometimes we may have to provide the landscape details. Sometimes we have to provide the deployment method or any other customer defined parameters. For that, we have to create a survey form. So, or even when we integrate this with the ServiceNow, or we will integrate this with the Forge front-end portal, in that case, we have to define the survey so that from the ServiceNow service request, the necessary payloads will be collecting it and the workflow will be getting executed. So these are the features of manual execution. The next method, suppose every night or every morning we need to interact with certain API and we have to fetch the software updates and some activities to be performed. Such use cases, we can schedule these workflows, as most of you might be knowing that. The third use case is the schedules may not work every time, right? Because it will run in a particular interval, or it will execute in the desired interval. So when a user is doing some transaction, it should execute the job. It should not depend on any manual intervention, or it should not depend on any schedules. This transaction will be fully driven by events. So this is called event-driven automation. In this case, a user or a developer, we have 10 members in our team, and those 10 members will have their own branch. They are doing certain development. As and when they commit it to their parent branch or their repository, an event will be getting generated. Subsequently, this event would be capable enough to trigger our job. So we can configure that as well. So we will look at all these transactions. Okay. So now we are going to create a manual dispatch with survey form. Okay. Let's move on to the action here. Here we have name, description on workflow dispatch. Under workflow dispatch, we have to define inputs. In the inputs, we can define here, let's say that name is the variable. Under name, we can define type. Type should be string. And description, name of the candidate. Here we will define default. I can put my name here, Melvin. So that's it for the string. Next type, we will say height. Of course, it should be, the type must be an integer. So we will mention number, and description should be height of the candidate. Okay. And default should be 152. Okay. The next is going to be qualification. So type should be choice, and description should be qualification of the candidate. Okay. And here default, I would say BTech, and options. Options must be list. I'll put BTech, BCA, MCA, BSc, MTech. Okay, so we have provided this many items, right? What else? In general, we used to go for a Boolean as well, right? So for that, eligible, let's put that as well. Eligible type, let's put Boolean. Environment, we will look at it later. Nothing to worry. Description. Candidate is eligible or not. And default is going to be what we say, Boolean, right? True. And in this case, or we will leave as it is, so it will be a checkbox. So eligibility part we have already done here. Now, how do we call this variables? For that, we will do one thing. I'm just going to define only one thing, okay? I'm just going to call a magic variable. In GitHub, if there is a variable, we can call it with a dollar followed by double curly brace. So this is called template calling or a go method. So within the double curly brace. So here I'm going to mention to JSON and I'll put GitHub. Okay. Let it be there. I will let you know why am I keeping these things. I'm going to save this and I'm going to commit the changes. Perfect. So the changes are being committed. What happened? Okay. Let me refresh it. Okay. So when we look at it here, it is yet to be committed. Interesting. Oh, I have to provide a message here. I'm going to commit the payload. I'm going to sync the changes. Perfect. The changes are in sync. Let me refresh it. Perfect. Everything is here. Now we are going to execute the job. For that, practice workflow. And in this practice workflow, if you look at it here, the name of the candidate is a string. So we can give here Melvin Satishan. I can put this. And height, it's basically the numeric, so I may be able to provide my height. And the qualification, either the BTech or BCA, MCA, BSc, MTech, whatever it is, I can select it. Here is the Boolean expression. So if I tick it by default, it will be true, and if I uncheck it, it's false. I'll select checked, then I will execute this workflow. The workflow has been manually executed. Remember, manually executed. So in this case, perfect. If you look at step number 1, forget about everything else. Input we have already provided. We have provided a certain inputs, right? And the moment we have executed it, we are able to see certain data here. Okay, we are going to discuss about that. Then you will be able to understand why we have provided the manual input. How do we pick or map the manual input? Okay, perfect. Here I have given to JSON. So it's basically converting it into a JSON object. GitHub is basically a magic variable. It captures all the events and the variables pertain to a workflow. Everything within the workflow that we are converting it in the form of JSON format. Okay. Now let's examine that what all the parameters are present. This is basically the job name. This is the repository branch name. This is its SHA value, and it's the repository name and repository owner name, repository owner ID, and the URL. We have all the details are here. Assume that you are developing a CI/CD pipeline where you need to define certain conditions. In that case, you can extract the desired data from this magic variable. That's the only reason I have shown you here. Now coming into the point, we have an event. What is that event? I have created a manual workflow dispatch. Event name is a workflow dispatch. That means I have manually executed this workflow. How did I execute the workflow? By providing certain inputs. What are that inputs? I have provided eligibility. I checked the box so that it is true. It's a boolean. I have provided my height. It's a number. I have provided my name. It has already been updated here as a string. Then my qualification, that is also updated here. Everything is visible here, right? And also it is listing the repository URLs and the parameters pertain to this repository. So as and when you do certain automation, you would be able to perfectly use all these URLs. Assume that you are executing this and you need to create an issue, or you need to send some mail to the owner. In all those cases, you can cherry pick, or you can pick the desired value from this environment variable. So that's the beauty of this parameter. Okay, remember that. You will never ever forget this thing. Now the next part, I'm going to tell you how do we call our input parameters. Okay, so here is my to.json GitHub, right? So what I will do here is my echo, the username is, I'm going to mention the username is to.json GitHub, right? So to.json GitHub, I have already something defined in the to.json GitHub. Rather than that, I'll be converting it into GitHub dot, where it is basically event, GitHub dot event dot inputs dot name. I'm going to mention only this basically, and I'm going to commit this as well. Let's see how it goes. So syncing is completed. So let's refresh this window and see whether the action is getting updated or not. Perfect. So if you look at here, GitHub event inputs name, let's execute and see how it goes, because I want you to see that, or if there is any mistake, we have to troubleshoot it. Okay. So it's getting executed. Right. So when you look at here, the username is Melvin. So this way you can call your username, right? So it is located in GitHub event inputs name. So don't by heart all these things. All you need is, you should know that it is there in the GitHub. GitHub is the master variable. The moment you call it as a GitHub here, so it listed all your necessary variables. So from there, you can map the necessary things. And every time you can call this variables within a double curly brace, and you can put a dollar symbol in front of that. So this is called templating calling, or a Go calling. In the Golang language, we used to do this kind of thing. Sometimes many of you might be familiar with the Python programming. There we have Jinja 2 templating, right? There we used to declare the variables inside the Jinja template using this double curly brace. Perfect. So this part is fine. So we will now check how do we schedule the GitHub action in the next video. So thank you so much for your time. If you have any concerns or doubts, feel free to put it in the comment. I will look at it. Thank you.